Hi everyone, and welcome to my channel. After my recent discussion about spirit photography, and in case you missed that and would like to see it, I'll leave a link to it above, I mentioned that when William Mumler made his ghost photographs, he used the wet plate collodion method of photography. Now, I thought it would be interesting to make a follow-up video about the wet and dry plate methods of photography, because most people really don't realize the very marked inherent hazards in doing wet plate collodion photography. A lot of people died. And also I have a great story about dry plate photography I'd like to tell you too. And if topics like this sound interesting to you, I'd really appreciate your support by having you hit that subscribe button. Let's get started. If you were a photographer in the 1850s to the early 1870s, you had yourself one tough, demanding, and yes, potentially dangerous job. Well, first of all, there was no Kodak film to pick up at the corner drugstore. Come to think of it, there's no Kodak film to pick up at the corner drugstore now either. No, you used the wet plate collodion process. Here's what that entailed. You had to bring your own tent with you to act as a darkroom, and with that, you had to bring all the darkroom chemicals you were going to use. You had to bring with you heavy glass plates that you had pre-cut to the appropriate size, all out into the field with you. You needed some method to carry all this stuff because it was quite heavy, and people usually used either horses or donkeys. When you were at the site you were going to photograph and ready to go, you had to wipe down the edges of the glass plate with egg white, and then you coated the glass plates with a very syrupy substance called collodion. The collodion-coated plates were then dunked into a silver nitrate bath for several minutes in order to make them light sensitive. Once light sensitive, they had to be loaded into a dark slide so that you can bring them outside the darkroom without exposing them. You then took the dark slide and loaded it into the camera so that the plate could be in position to take your image. You would then go ahead and take your photograph, and then right afterwards you had to put the plate back into the dark slide by inserting the dark slide into the camera, and then taking the plate back into the darkroom in order to develop it. Oh, and you had better expose and develop those glass plates within about 15 minutes, or else they're going to dry out and you're going to have to start all over again. Oh, and make sure you don't kill yourself either by explosion or by inhaling cyanide gas. What? Here's what. Check out this warning from a website that talks about using the wet plate collodion method for those that want to try it today. Yeah, you can cause an explosion in any of several ways. First off, there were a lot of volatile liquids. Secondly, in the heating process of recovering the expensive silver from the silver nitrate bath, you could potentially cause an explosion. In addition, some photographers added glycerin to the silver nitrate bath, which aided with silver recovery. And depending on how they did it, let's see, explosions, nitrates, glycerin. That's right, you could potentially end up with nitroglycerin. There were also flash powders in use that could cause potential explosions around the volatile chemicals. How about cyanide? You got to watch out for that too. It can be generated in the developing and fixing process. I'm not sure, but I don't think they had those alternative fixers back in those days. You used the real thing and you had to be real careful. Horrible? Oh, you bet it was. That's why when dry plate photography was developed in 1871 by Dr. Richard Maddox, it replaced wet plate photography very, very rapidly. In the dry plate method, glass plates are pre-coated with a gelatin-like emulsion and made light-sensitive using silver halides instead of silver nitrate. The plates were then allowed to dry. So get this, the plates were used dry, the plates could be stored in the dark and then put into the camera using a dark slide at your convenience whenever you wanted to go photograph. And when you were done, you didn't have to develop them right away. You could put them back into the dark and develop them at your convenience. This made photography a lot more convenient and a tremendous amount less hazardous to your health. So this development of dry plate photography made photography really much more accessible to the masses, and in effect, it really was the precursor of that Kodak roll film that you bought at the drugstore. So now I'd like to tell you a short dry plate story that happened to me, along with a short demonstration. So I had been working part-time at a location, and one of the guys that I was working with, quickly found out that I had an interest in photography. And one morning he came in and told me that several years earlier, I don't exactly remember, he had been hiking or biking or had been driving by a road in Virginia and had come across an old abandoned farmhouse. Now, he went down into the farmhouse and it looked like nobody had been inside for many, many decades. And he found this. And we'll get into in a moment what exactly this is. At any rate, he felt that if he left it there, that it would be lost to history forever. And so he took it. Now, I don't want to debate whether he should have taken it or not. That horse was out of the barn, years before I met him. But he did have it, and he said it was just sitting with him and he didn't know what to do with it. And because of my interest, maybe I can make something of it. So, what exactly are these? As you might have guessed, it's a box of dry plates. The M.A.SEED Dry Plate Company was founded in 1883, and in 1902 was purchased by none other than the Eastman Kodak Company. That would date this box of dry plates as well over 100 years old. But it's not just a box of dry plates. It's a box of exposed and developed dry plates. Let's have a look. When you develop a dry plate, it appears as a negative image, as you can see here. To make a positive, you can go ahead and make a contact print, just like in the film days. You remember those, right? This was the plate that was in the best shape of all of them in the box. Most of them were pretty heavily damaged. So, how could I make something of this? Normally, as my kids would say, back in the day, they would make a contact print or an enlargement from the dry plate glass negative. I decided to try the same thing in Photoshop. So step one was to put the dry plate onto my flatbed scanner and try to make an image of it to bring into Photoshop. And this is what I got. So this is the image off the flatbed scanner, which is the negative that you see on the dry plate. And in order to duplicate the contact print process in Photoshop, I go to Image, Adjustments, and Invert. And now we have a positive image. And after a few curves enhancements to make it a little nicer, we get a picture of a little girl. And if we crop a bit, we can come up with this. Using the same method, I was able to recover several more photographs from the box of dry plates. And this last one truly is a bit ghostly. Well, perhaps in some small way, this serves to bring back the memory of the people in the photographs. And I know it's exceedingly unlikely, but if anyone out there should happen to know who these people are, please do let me know, and I'd be glad to return the dry plates and the images to the family. I hope you found this discussion about wet and dry plate photography interesting, and if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below, and I'd love to talk about it. I'm Howard, and my channel is about introducing viewers to photographers who inspire, to discussing all sorts of photographic topics, and to enhancing creativity with Photoshop and Lightroom tutorials. And if those topics sound interesting to you, I'd really appreciate your support of the channel by having you click on that subscribe button below. We'll see you next time.